Morning, the Nasdaq's on pace for the worst day since about August 17th. The Dow and the S&P did set some new record highs this morning. And meantime, Bitcoin crossing 11,000 for the first time just a few hours after topping 10,000. For more on this, let's bring in Formula Capital Managing Director and Chess Master James Altucher and Spencer Bogart, Managing Director at Blockchain Capital. Guys, good to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for having me on.
So much of Bitcoin is poorly understood, right? We're all trying to make sense of the phenomenon that it's become. What's your overall take on the price action change, the future of its use in American business, global business?
So that's two questions.
Yep.
I think day by day, who knows? Coinbase is the largest exchange for Bitcoin. They're adding 100,000 new customers a day. What do each one of those 100,000 people do? They buy a Bitcoin. So that's driving the demand up on a daily basis. Overall, in the long term, we see there's $200 billion worth of cryptocurrencies out there, but there's $200 trillion of demand for money out there. So if Bitcoin is truly solving the problems of paper and fiat currency, which I believe, you're going to see that 200 billion start to move up to 200 trillion. So this price action, who knows day by day, but long term, this price action is certainly not unreasonable, and it's going to continue to go higher.
Jim, just to follow up, back in August, when Bitcoin was at around 4,000, I think you wrote, correct me if I'm wrong, we're in a hype bubble. It doesn't mean cryptos are bad. It doesn't mean you shouldn't buy. It just means there's a lot of hype and scammers out there.
Yes.
We've seen this story at least twice before in the past 20 years, et cetera.
Yes, there are so many bogus cryptocurrencies out there. 95% of these alternative cryptocurrencies are probably scams. Bitcoin is not one of them. Bitcoin's legitimate. It's the biggest one. It's been around the longest. But everyone, just like with every financial innovation, scammers and Ponzi schemes get in the game. That's certainly happening, and you have to be careful. But the cryptocurrency trend and the Bitcoin trend is not going to stop.
So, Spencer, you obviously believe in Bitcoin, clearly. Do you think that we need derivative Bitcoin products to sort of help maybe the legitimacy or help others be able to play in Bitcoin, futures, ETPs, so exchange-traded products? What do you think about those ideas?
Listen, yeah, we hear a lot about is Bitcoin in a bubble, but the reality is that institutional ownership is about 0% at this point.
Right.
And we need some of these familiar wrappers like futures, ETPs, et cetera, that help put it in a context that traditional investors can touch. Even on the retail side, less than 2% of people own any Bitcoin, and yet 14% say they prefer Bitcoin to stocks. That would be a 10x increase in adoption if those people actually go and put some money into Bitcoin.
Yeah, and let's just add, JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon was trashing Bitcoin a few weeks ago, and now they've just announced they're going to help their clients get into Bitcoin futures, which is a derivative product. So certainly they see there's opportunity here, and that's a huge retail investor base that's going to start playing around with Bitcoin with derivatives.
Do you need it to be transactional for more retail investors to get in or to want to get in to understand it? Does it need to be a currency?
Yes, I agree with you completely. But notice Amazon just registered 3 or 4 domain names completely related to cryptocurrencies, largest retailer in the world. They're going to start accepting Bitcoin, and everyone will follow after that.
I completely disagree. I do not think that it needs to be transactional. Transactional is what people see at first because they hear cryptocurrency, they think payments. But the real reason why people buy today is as a digital gold. They're not transacting with it. People don't like to spend appreciating assets. Amazon will not start accepting Bitcoin because it doesn't make sense for them. People don't like to spend Bitcoin. They're doing brand protection by registering certain domain names.
Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winner. Bitcoin successful only because of its potential for circumvention, lack of oversight. So it seems to me it ought to be outlawed. What is the risk of real regulatory pressure or complete illegality?
Let's not forget what large entity wants to occasionally make large transactions around the world in secret? The U.S. government. So believe it or not, the U.S. government is heavily looking into how they can personally or institutionally use Bitcoin to spend. So there will be regulation. There needs to be. There's so many scams, as you point out. But the regulations are going to protect people. Bitcoin itself is a trend that's going to continue.
Spencer, tell me, what are the fundamentals that you look at with Bitcoin? Because this is the piece, one of many pieces that I can't figure out. Besides demand, right, which can go in lots of different directions, especially as the public rushes in. People get scared for a dumb reason, just like they get excited for a dumb reason. Besides demand, what are the fundamentals driving the price of Bitcoin?
That's fair. I mean, I think that overall, anytime we have some sort of macroeconomic uncertainty, people rush to that risk-off trade, and that could be gold, it could be Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's certainly been a benefactor in that respect. I think that transaction value is another important metric out there of how much value is flowing over the network on a daily basis. How much are people trusting the network with how many billions of dollars?
Well, I still can't figure out why it would be a surprise if Bitcoin dropped to $1,000 per Bitcoin as quickly as it's gone up to 11,000 from 1,000. It would make just as much sense from a demand perspective.
And even if that did happen, if Bitcoin lost 85% of its value today, it would still be up more than 40% on the year.
Yeah, which is great.
And if the long-term trend is going to much higher prices, short-term volatility is not going to matter. It's the long-term trend here that's important. The fact that it does solve huge fundamental problems like, infinite minting, forgery, double spending, privacy. There's many problems that Bitcoin solves on a fundamental level that investors and governments are going to need.
So finally, we covered Diamond's comments pretty heavily when he called it a fraud. John McAfee, for whatever it's worth, says he now predicts $1 million by the end of 2020. Do you guys have targets or not?
Yeah, I'll say $1 million by 2020 as well, easily.
It seems reasonable. I'm not putting out too many price targets these days, but that seems reasonable. I mean, listen, as with most major technology shifts, let's think about what young people are doing. 32% of young people say they prefer Bitcoin to stocks. 42% of millennial males say they plan to purchase Bitcoin in the next 5 years. We're barely in the first inning right now.
And let's just say there's 15 million millionaires around the world. All their financial advisors are going to say, hey, buy a Bitcoin, you need some exposure. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins minted ever in history. That's going to also drive demand.
James, Spencer, we're going to keep covering it
Let's
day in
do
and day
it.
out. Thank you guys. Appreciate